I saw a lot of people in my life struggling with anxiety, depression, isolation, and grief. One of my parents even experienced a suicide attempt. As a woman, I feel like it is up to me to be the caregiver and emotional support for people I love, even as I was struggling myself. I know that we all rely on each other, but a lot of the time it feels like it is up to me to care for my parents, my partner, and my community. Asking for help is really hard, and I'm exhausted.
I became a mother during the COVID-19 pandemic.
It was very stressful.
It was very
stressful.
My anxiety
and it
affected my anxiety a lot more.
You have to be a strong human being.
You have to be a strong human being
to be a
single mother.
As a woman and the leader of my family, the pandemic caused me to experience anxiety on a daily basis. I felt helpless at keeping my family safe. As a social worker, I had to continue serving the community and ensure that the clients I served were safe and educated on what was happening. There were many days I felt helpless. I attached myself to everything positive for my strength.
As a single mother of 2 toddlers with a full-time and part-time job, COVID-19 taught me how to be independent. It taught me how to save and to be as prepared as I could be. After a month of being in the house with a 2-year-old and a 4-month-old, I have to get a break at least once a month for my children. Depression is real. Reaching out to family and friends to watch your children does not make you a weak mother or woman. You can love your children and take a break.
Women are naturally born into positions to be caretakers, healers, and a shoulder to cry on. We are often drawn to professional fields that prioritize helping others too. Women in healthcare, and specifically mental health, are dependent on even more to comfort others during times of distress, grief, or trauma. The pandemic has highlighted the importance of women prioritizing their own mental health and self-care, as we are humans too and require healthy outlets to stay sound.
Good afternoon. What powerful stories we just heard from women across Metro Atlanta as they share the COVID-19 pandemic on their own mental health. I'm Chandra Luckett, Chief Marketing Officer here at Chris 180, and we thank you for joining us for our Season 3 premiere of Lunchtime Live. In honor of Women's History Month, we are discussing the journey, the struggles that women in our world have been on these past 24 months. As we know, women are seen as caregivers, caretakers of all of the things in our world, but how much pressure is too much? In the past 24 months, we have seen a high number of women reporting rates of anxiety or depression or overall stress and not feeling strong. But what does that look like in real life, and how do we move forward? Today, our panelists will discuss the things that they have seen, heard, and tips for women to move forward and for people in their lives to know how to best support them. As always, you can put your questions in the chat and we will answer them live. Ladies, take it away.
Hello, everyone. I am Shanessa Crook. I'm currently one of the therapists at Counseling Center of Atlanta. Right now, the population that I currently serve is majority adults, but I also have some teenagers and some little kiddos as well. I'll pass it along to you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Marky Nickens. I'm one of the therapists at the Adamsville location of Chris 180. I primarily work with adolescents and young adults.
Hello, everyone. My name is Cindy Song, and I work at Chris Counseling DeKalb. I'm currently working with all populations, so children, teens, adults, et cetera, et cetera.
Good day. I'm Kiwi Barnett. I'm the Chief People Officer here at Chris 180, and I work with all the employees here as well as external contacts. Thanks.
Okay, ladies, as this is Women's Mental History Month and things like that, I think it's important for us to share our stories about what we experienced during the pandemic as well. And just to start off, I'll go ahead and talk about my own difficulties having had COVID during the pandemic in the very early stages, but also being forced to go into unemployment. And as someone who is filling all these roles that were kind of mentioned in the stories that were told before we started, I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm being forced to take time for myself. What does that look like for the first time in my life? And so that was kind of a little bit about my experience.
Thank you. A little bit about my experience. So I started off as a therapist here when COVID had already started. It was June of 2020. And something that I struggled with was how to balance my own mental health and make sure I was taking care of myself while also making sure I was available to be a good therapist and to be a positive support for other people and for my clients. And something that I struggled with was taking a step back and taking time for myself when I felt like I needed a break and I needed to prioritize my own mental health without feeling like that was a selfish act or like that was unfair to the people that might have been counting on me to be there.
Yeah, I would say one of the main things for me throughout the pandemic when it first started was the shutdown. I'm the youngest of 5 and I'm very close to my family. So at that point, me and my siblings were going to visit my mom like every Friday, and then to not, even be able to do that, that was hard at the time for me.
Great. For me, I think the pandemic added different challenges as a single parent, learning how to balance a very difficult or challenging job with family in the home with blurred lines of time was very much a challenge that I had to work through to ensure that I got some personal time.
Yeah. So I love how it seems like we've all been affected in, so many different ways. What are some ways that you all have noticed just other women in general being affected throughout the pandemic?
For sure. I think I've noticed a lot of consistent themes, but I think it would be important for me to highlight the social positionality and the intersectionality of identities between all women. So it's different to have identity as not only as a woman, but as a person of color or as an immigrant or someone who's disabled or able-bodied, for someone who is a caretaker. All these roles and identities that intersect with one another, it just really impacts the mental health overall. And I think it would be very important to highlight that. Things that I currently hear right now, and I've been hearing since I've started my work at Chris 180, is just the difficulty in terms of being selfish. What does it mean to be selfish? What does it mean to have self-care for oneself, but also maintaining all these different roles? Like, how am I supposed to be a mother? How am I supposed to be a full-time employee? How am I supposed to take care of myself and my children and all my friends and who are all looking upon me for advice and support, and then not having that of them, any of that on themselves for either. So.
I think the word caregiver implies that an individual is giving care to somebody else. And something that I've seen during this pandemic is how can we reframe that to mean that we're also taking care of our own selves? Because it's important to make sure that we're prioritizing our own mental and emotional and physical well-being in order to support ourselves and to support others.
Kind of creating or finding that balance, right, between all areas of our life, and to truly lift up our health, not just our physical health, but our mental health and our spiritual health during these times. It's a constant area that you have to give focus and attention to make sure that you're having those.
Yeah, I definitely agree with a lot of the highlights that you all made, especially when you said trying to find a balance. A lot of people felt like they had to play so many different roles and that, they weren't able to, get a break from this or get a break from that. With a lot of self-guilt, definitely during the beginning.
I'm not sure if that guilt is something that really anyone expected, especially not in the beginning. Everyone was maybe in a bit of a survival mode. And then once that guilt set in, people started thinking, this is new. What am I supposed to do with this guilt that I now have?
Yeah. Well, and how the guilt actually impacts or turns back around on the way we treat ourselves, because that guilt may stop us from seeking the help or seeking self-help or self-care that we need to kind of keep going.
And I think it's interesting how like the isolation and being forced to be isolated, what you were mentioning, Shannon, about not being able to see your family, how that impacted our mental health as women as well. Like we seek to our mothers and grandmothers and our siblings and our friends and family for sometimes that escape from being able to fulfill all those roles, but being forced to say, no, I can't, and having to adjust in a culture and society where social media was now the only way that you could contact people. And how that isolation and just the pandemic fatigue, as it's now year 3 into it, increases depression and anxiety, especially in children. So how does that affect the mothers too, right? Being like, oh my gosh, now I have to take care of my kids and their mental health issues, and I don't even have time to take care of mine.
Yeah, I would say I've definitely seen a surge, not only in the clients, but just in, the general population with depression and anxiety. Some people developing an extreme fear just to, simply go outdoors and, even in their yards, the grocery stores. So it definitely changed a lot of people where they're not able to return to the life that they once knew.
It looks like we have a question.
Yes, and this was right in line with what you all just talked about. It says, I'm a single woman who has dealt with so much isolation and loneliness during this time. I'm afraid of getting sick, but I also don't want to keep missing out on everything. Any advice?
I think there's the anxiety around that COVID brought us about becoming sick, especially as a single person, if you're the sole breadwinner, if you're trying to take care of yourself or others, is very real and impacts the way we act and how we participate in society. In these situations, I find that it's really important to take baby steps. It's almost like, starting again from fresh and take really small steps out into our communities and back into our prior lives. So having grace with yourself and allowing yourself the opportunity to make very small steps as far as socializing, think about the environments that you would best feel most comfortable in, and take it in small tidbits of time even. Try not to spend, you're not going to be able to spend a whole day out, for example. It may be just 30 minutes and kind of build from there.
I was going to say what I love about Chris 180 and one of the values that we stand for is safety. And so what does safety mean to you? And like on a day-to-day, how can you take in your capacity for things, whether that be the mental, physical, emotional, spiritual capacity that you have to kind of come out of your isolation or seek support? Who do you have as peers? Who do you have as family members who you can start with those baby steps that you were mentioning earlier to rely on and to gain some of that social kind of energy that you kind of need to refill?
I also think it's important when you are taking those small steps to celebrate those small steps, taking towards your larger goal. Sometimes it can be difficult not to fall into comparison. Well, this is what I see everyone else around me doing. Why am I not able to do that? And it's important to celebrate yourself, celebrate the steps that you've taken and the successes that you've had towards getting back out into the world, because it's important to recognize the positive steps that you've taken. And even the smallest of steps deserve applause and celebration.
Yeah. I think it may also be helpful to maybe have an accountability partner. So maybe, because you're not the only one going through this, so having someone to push you, okay, maybe do, like Huey said, 30 minutes outdoors, or maybe I'll do 15 minutes of an activity that I enjoy just to kind of make those strides towards your goal. Okay, looks like we have another question.
Yeah, this one comes from Facebook, and she asks, for people who are working 100% from home, what advice do you have for keeping work separate from home?
That is a great question.
Maybe some of us are still trying to figure that one out.
So for me, I definitely had to figure that out kind of early within the pandemic, having my house full of children. I definitely have an office, a home office, but even if you don't have a home office, I would recommend that you delineate a space that's considered your workspace and delineate time, work hours. It's really easy working from home to work right through lunch. You don't eat breakfast, go straight through dinner. Really hold yourself accountable to times and places, and that way your work is only in that location. As much of us may have to do this, some people do have their work location set up in their bedrooms, but to me that's one of the most challenging areas because as somebody told me, I don't work from home, I sleep at work. It's very difficult, trying to making that space clear between work and home is going to be really important when you're working 100% from home, I think.
Those boundaries, most definitely. I know for me, like you mentioned, having that office set up. So luckily, none of us knew that this was coming, but I kind of already had an office set up, in my living room. So it was, it was ready, but we didn't know we were going to be in it so long. So me definitely having to find a balance. I found myself, because the hours were longer, virtually. So working and like, okay, I haven't even went outside in 2 days. Let me step out or let me go to the store. So yeah, learning how to create those boundaries and making sure you're getting that time outside of the home as well.
Yeah, I think it was important to take breaks. Like I would take breaks and even walk down my driveway, believe it or not, just to get out and breathe some different kind of air. I think that's important.
Well, sticking with the work thing, we just got another question, and this person says, I'm a mom of 2, and my company just went back full time in office, but I need more remote options. How do I ask for help from my boss without feeling like it's a sob story?
I think that's really hard, especially as women, when these kind of stereotypes are perpetuated onto us, where if we're asking for too much, we are that mean person in the office, or we're that, not so appropriate language, and I think it is about boundary setting and advocating for yourself. Unfortunately, men do it all the time, not unfortunately, but, they have the confidence and they have that boost and encouragement from people to be like, here, take what you need, take a stand. We don't get that encouragement so much. And so I would like to empower you to say, these are your needs, express those needs, advocate for yourself. And I'm sure that it's not just you who is experiencing this in the office. And to do that, I think would give you a sense of like power. And it's so important to create, again, that work-home life balance, because if you're not taking care of you, you can't take care of anybody else. And that's going to affect your work performance at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think, making one, it's very important to self-advocate. Just because you're a woman, just because you're a mother, does not mean that you're unable to self-advocate. And I think that it's really important too, to bring to the table the positive outcomes that can happen by your employer being flexible. So, truth be told, we looked during the pandemic and most of us became more productive during the pandemic for the fact that we didn't have to commute, for the fact that, lunch is like 2 steps away instead of going out for lunch, for example. So there are things there that definitely increase your productivity and allow you to be an even better employee for your employer. And so those are the areas that I would focus on. I don't want people to give me the ability to remote work or flexibility in my work just because I'm a mother, because that's not the only reason why. Part of it is partly for my mental health and well-being. And that's going to be regardless of if I'm a mother or not. Some of us work better from home. Some of us are more productive from home. So really focusing on where your wins are by setting up a more flexible work environment. Work is changing, and our employers, we have to acknowledge that.
I would definitely have to second that, self-advocate. Because if you don't do it for yourself, it's not usually going to be, someone that does that for you. You may meet, a few people here and there that try to, fight for what you need, but no one can do it like you. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the discussion around home-life balance, right? And the balancing act that many women have faced. What have you all seen in people in your lives?
I've seen that there is none. To be honest, it's like what we were talking about earlier is about those boundaries. I think it's really good to bring up intentionality, right? There is no intention to create that balance sometimes because it is that pressure to be the best, to do everything, to take care of it, to not have a balance, right? We were talking about productivity and that pressure sometimes that we place on ourselves, that's not even from the higher ups, right? I think what I've been trying to encourage some of my clients, my friends, and my family to do is to be intentional about that time. What does it mean to give back yourself all that energy that maybe we for the first time experienced during the pandemic, maybe a secret blessing in disguise to have so much time to actually dedicate to yourself. And try to incorporate that. Just because we're kind of transitioning back into the offices, kind of into the real world where, you know, the pandemic is kind of a little bit less crazy, it doesn't mean that we have to give up those things that we developed for ourselves during that time where we had a little bit more flexibility.
I think with the lack of the home life balance, it's led to burnout happening a lot quicker. And what I really, you know, try to work with, you know, with my clients and also with my friends and my family members as well, is to identify the signs of burnout and implement those, like either self-soothing or coping skills during the workday, or just any other, you know, engagement in hobbies or activities, or even just people that you like to hang out with, to manage that burnout before it starts. Because we wouldn't want anyone to start feeling burnout to the point where I'm in too deep and I don't know how to ask for help, and I don't know how to get out of this hole that I've gotten myself into.
Huey, from an HR perspective, what have you seen in terms of trends with women in the workplace during the pandemic?
As far as balance, so the reality of it, you guys, in my opinion, there's no such thing as work-life balance. There's certain times that work demands more, and there's certain times that your life demands more. And it's about flexing those times. It's the fact that as an employee of an organization, I have PTO time to use when my life is demanding more. And from my home life, I institute and enable other supports when my work demands more. You know, I think, you know, the difficulty in trying to balance everything is somewhat of that impossible unicorn. And that only adds additional pressure to women in the workplace, because it's assumed that we should be able to handle it all. And really, I don't think that's fair. And I don't think that's a fair expectation that we place on ourselves or other women. I think that there's just times that things demand more or less. And it's about making sure that we identify that so that we're not focusing all our life on work. If I'm a woman, I do not have children, I still don't think you should focus 200% of your time on work. You should have a life outside of work. So that, you know, it's about us really making sure we're being intentional about our time and being intentional about how we want our life to be as a whole, and work is just a part of that.
Right. A very small part, you know, of our lives, our duties, our responsibilities. So yeah, I agree. Sometimes you have to fluctuate between the two. Am I going to give more to this? Am I going to give more to that? But you can definitely do both.
So we just got a question, and this is a husband writing in saying, my wife, I think, is reaching her wits' end. She's not sleeping or eating well, and I keep asking her if she needs help and trying to take some of the burden off, but she always says, I don't know how to navigate what the kids need. How can I help her not have so much burnout?
You know, I think that's an awesome question. And I'm so glad you're even perceptive as a husband. I think that because many of us, you know, as women have been raised to think that we can't handle it all, it's very hard for us to delegate or give some of our roles or tasks away. And so it may be for our husbands or men in our lives to actually just go and just take authority and be that dad without letting us know. I know in my personal life, those have been some of those aha moments when somebody just, I picked them up. Oh gosh, like I didn't ask you to, and you just noticed that would have helped me out. I think that as to be a true support, especially for somebody who's overwhelmed, sometimes you just have to step in and kind of pick up one of the balls.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It sounds like maybe the wife is just having a hard time accepting the support, even though she definitely needs the support at this time. Yeah.
Asking for help is one of those, it's easier said than done. It's something I talk about with, again, clients and family members and friends. It's probably every day that I say to at least someone, well, you should just ask for help. They're going to say yes. It's one sentence. And I never do that myself. So it's something that's much easier said than done. So I do think stepping up and again, being intentional, I think intention maybe a theme here, and being intentional and saying, all right, I understand this is something that's really difficult for another person. So I'm going to take initiative and I'm just gonna, do this on my own.
I also think that with my kind of also like sometimes single mother clients and things like that, they're always like, my child is put first. Everyone else is before me because I can handle it. That is a child, that's a baby. I have to take care of my kids. They don't have anyone to advocate for themselves. And I have to remind them, well, if you're not advocating for you, you're not taking care of yourself, you're not in any place to be taking care of anybody else, right? You might be doing more harm than help, right? That's why there's that infomercial during airplane flights, right? Put your mask on first before you put on a kid's mask or help anybody else. And I think to say it's not selfish, but you're actually doing this for you and for everybody else around you, and kind of keeping that that level of support is going to be super helpful, taking that initiative for sure.
Yeah, I definitely agree, Cindy. I love how you pointed that out. Not having enough to help someone else if you're not pouring into yourself, for sure.
So what does self-care look like? Seems like we're leading into that part of the discussion.
Self-care, something we hear all the time, right? I would say what I have noticed a lot with self-care, even when I mention it to other people, most people automatically go to the physical. So I'm like, what did you do for self? Well, I got my nails done. I went to the hair salon. I was like, okay, that's nice. But what did you do for yourself internally? And that's usually kind of like the stuck point. I'm like, okay, well, maybe I didn't do anything to work on myself inside. So we kind of talk about setting boundaries, like we mentioned earlier, advocating for yourself, even just saying no to certain things to make sure you're not overcommitting.
I also ask people to kind of think and look into their lives and see what gives them energy, right? The things that maybe like hanging out with your friends and stuff, maybe that isn't for you. It could be a little bit more draining than it is energizing for you. I see that similar thing where people are like, I did my hair, I did my makeup, I got dressed, I went shopping, and I'm like, that's great. And if that's how you define self-care, then so be it. If you look good on the outside, you feel good on the inside, that's great. But are you sleeping? Are you eating? Are you drinking water? Are you doing your basic needs? And then on top of that, actually thinking about what how you are spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and physically, right? Are you tired? Are you drained? Are you burnt out? What does it mean to self-assess? And then figure out things that actually help you and make you feel better instead of doing what everyone expects of you to do to feel better.
Yeah, I just would add that, making sure that you're including things that make you happy. It may not make you happy to go sit and wait on somebody to do your hair, believe it or not. It may make you happy to do a project, or, it may look like work to somebody else, but it may fulfill something within you. So really remembering that self-care is truly individual. It is what makes you tick, and it's what makes you happy. I think that people should really focus on that side too.
So for the therapist in the room, what does it look like to need a little bit more help? You have self-assessed, you have done self-care, but you really still feel anxious or stressed or maybe depressed. How do you do that next big ask for help and reach out?
I would say definitely start with self-reflection. Because a lot of times you can notice your change in energy, the different things that are going on, whether it's, your body or maybe, the way you're treating other people in your life. So paying attention to those different things and being able to highlight it and say, okay, this is where I am, but this is where I want to be. I think that's a good start.
When it comes to asking for help, I feel some people may associate that with more of a negative connotation, like I need help because I'm lacking in some area, because I am falling behind, I don't know how to do this. I feel like I'm drowning because I don't have the skills or the knowledge or the understanding to do this task. And that can make it really difficult to ask for help because, maybe it's just me personally, but I don't sometimes want people to know that I don't know that. I don't know how to do that. And I need help with that. And so I think it's important to reframe asking for help to be something a little more positive and think of it as, okay, there's something that maybe I wasn't taught, or something that I didn't learn, or something that I'm too new at this to know. And there are people out there who do know and can tell me and can give me that information so I'm able to do it on my own the next time. And I think reframing help into something that it's not anything on like your lack of knowledge or understanding. It's just, this is something that maybe I wasn't taught or I didn't know. And there are other people out there that can teach me.
And I think also on top of that is like changing the narrative completely. Like I think you were mentioning like some of those like negative aspects or negative beliefs that we hold about what it is to ask for help, right? Doesn't mean that it's a weakness, doesn't mean that I'm lacking in some area. It's like, well, if that's something that's been reinforced to you since you were young, like you have to do this on your own. If you're not doing it on your own, you're lazy. If you're, all those like really kind of sometimes toxic stories that we hear that reinforced into us as we're kind of transitioning into adulthood and like people who are living in this society, I think it's really important to be like, maybe that isn't the narrative that I want to carry for the rest of my life. And maybe it is just saying like, I can't, and that's okay. And I encourage everyone to just say like asking for help, just like vulnerability used to be seen as a weakness. It's not a weakness, it's a strength. And asking for help and knowing when you need a little bit more extra support is really one of those ultimate strengths that are really hard to develop on your own.
I would recommend, I see the point of view too, that you're really seeking knowledge, right? So yes, when people think about help, especially around mental health, there is that negative connotation that I'm hoping that we're really overcoming. But if you also look from the point of view that you're seeking knowledge, you can start from a much more comfortable place, like seeking out group sessions or group informational sessions where you just learn a little bit more about what's available. I think, especially when you think about the outcomes of the pandemic, a lot of people experience anxiety that maybe had never, ever experienced anxiety before. And so those negative connotations bubbled up very quickly. And instead of seeing it from that perspective, maybe seeing it from a perspective of seeking education, like knowledge, will lead them to be able to get help that they need. And I think we need to all give ourselves that grace to allow us to accept help to make our lives better.
Because at the end of the day, everyone needs help.
Yeah. So final question, and we'll do rapid fire really quickly. If you could talk to a woman who is watching this, who just feels like she's at the end of her rope and doesn't know what her next step should be, what would you say to her? And we will start with Marky.
Oh, wow. What I would say is that there are familial, peer, and professional supports in place to help you with anything that you need, just to be a shoulder to cry on from a friend or a therapist or any other professional. There are those safe and open spaces to seek out for help, and there's absolutely no shame, and we encourage everyone to seek help.
I would definitely agree. Also, think about who your supportive people are in your life and try to reach out to those people. You don't have to, tell them everything up front, but just kind of let them know, hey, I may need a little help with certain things, so that they'll know that they can step up a little bit.
I think I would start off by saying I'm sorry that life has kind of forced you to be in this space, and I hear you and I feel you, and whatever you're experiencing right now is completely valid, and you're not on your own. You're not alone, despite what you might tell yourself. And it's really, really okay, even though it feels like sometimes it's not. And to find additional sources of help, whether it be your family, friends, a therapist, again, or just a random stranger sometimes, or you yourself, buy yourself that cup of coffee that might be too expensive, it's okay, and you'll get there. And people are here for you. We're here for you.
I agree with Cindy. The first thing that came to mind was just inhale and exhale, and just know it's going to be okay. I think just the fact that you know that you're at your wit's end is a lot, and it should lead you to seek out help. Definitely. These fine professionals up here can help, but just knowing where you are will help step you in the direction you need to go. So just know it's okay, and look for the help that you need. Ask for that help. Don't not ask. Take care of yourself.
Wow, ladies, what a powerful conversation. I feel like I learned a lot, and I was amening in the corner back there. Thank you all for joining us for this really important conversation. We hope that you will share this video that you're watching on Instagram or YouTube or Facebook with someone in your world, with someone in your network who may just need some encouragement or may need to know that you're there for them. If you are a woman or someone who doesn't identify as a woman, we would love to help you here at Chris 180. If you need someone to talk to around anxiety, stress, depression, or any other issues, we are here for you. And we have counseling centers located throughout Metro Atlanta where many of these ladies work. Reach out to us. You can email our care team. You can go on our website and find out how to contact us. And we would love to be that support you need during times of trouble. We'll see you back here next month. Have a good day.